Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Pumped up on Mars, juice, and ketamine.
He is the Thomas Edison plus of our age.
Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy.
I would say 98% really appreciate what he does, but those 2% that are nasty, they are out there in full force.
We are meant for great things in the United States of America, and Elon reminds us of that.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, July 8th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. Okay, America, are you ready for the America Party? Elon Musk apparently thinks you are, launching the third party late last week and making bold declarations about upending the U.S. political order in what amounts to a dramatic escalation of his feud with President Donald Trump. So we're going back to D.C. to bring in another one of our star political reporters, Nancy Cook, to get into the nitty-gritty with me and Elon Inc. stalwart Max Chaffkin. Hello to you both.
Hey, David.
Hi, David. Hi, Max. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Nancy, thanks for coming back. It's been a while. It's been too long. Now, listen, if Elon's politics are the yin, well, then Tesla and its wobbly share price is the yang. By the way, I actually have no idea if this actually makes any sense, but I'm going to go with it anyways. Max, you sort of...
Yeah, sure. Why not?
It's close enough.
Yeah.
Good enough for rock and roll. And we'll bring in Esha Day to talk about the growing angst swirling in the market as Musk wades right back into politics. Okay, now, Nancy, so with your colleague there in Washington, Josh Green, we had previewed this last week. But then the big, beautiful bill got final approval in Congress and signed into law by Trump on the 4th of July. And Musk then announces the formation of the America Party the very next day. So tell us here, what do we need to know about the America Party? And what, as you see it, do the prospects look like for this thing?
Well, so Elon Musk was not happy with the tax bill, which I think that you guys have talked about extensively, and also hasn't been happy with the tariffs. And so he has broken with Trump and his advisors on some very key policy areas, and then has threatened to start this third political party on X. And so far, the idea just lives on X.
And you use the term threat. Is that really all it still is at this point, a threat?
Yes, that's all it is. I mean, creating a third political party is a huge, heavy lift. And not just a heavy lift initially, it's a sustained heavy lift.
What are some of the mechanics of this heavy lifting?
Sure. So it would require a ton of money. He has that. But, does he want to, invest that money for the long term to make an effect in both the midterms and the 2028 presidential election? Or does he, need to focus on his companies? So money is one. Two is his attention span. Sure, he is threatening Trump and Trump officials about this on X, but to create a third political party, you have to, register with the Federal Election Commission. You have to go to each individual state and make sure that your party is registered in each political state. There are some political consultants, I'm sure, in D.C. who are salivating at the idea of taking Elon's money and doing this. But to actually do it, it's so much effort in all these states to do it. And there's so much paperwork. And so, in addition to the money, my question is, does he have sort of this sustained attention span to do this? And then the other thing is that we have never really seen a successful third party. Ross Perot has tried it in the past.
Yeah.
Andrew Yang tried it.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, exactly. No Labels has tried it. But we've never seen
George Wallace.
Sure. But we've never seen a really successful bid for a third party. This is sort of a threat that he's making.
That is true, but Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party, I believe, and Ross Perot and whatever the hell the name of his party was, they did very much affect those elections.
Sure. There is no question that it could affect the election and it could, sort of siphon off votes from a Democrat or Republican party. Americans are very unhappy with the political system at this point, but I think it's just does he have the attention span and the money to do it, for a while? Because really the next marker would be the midterms, the 2026 midterms, when Republicans could lose the House. That's sort of what's up for grabs then. And then the 2028 election, the presidential election, assuming Trump doesn't try to stay a third term, which would require him changing the Constitution, but let's not put it past him. It will be a totally open election. There will be people running on the Republican side and people on the Democratic side. And I think it will be a very crowded field. And so, does Musk want to put up a candidate for that? I think that that's a ways off. But, I think that there are certainly these conversations happening.
Yeah. So, Max, this is something that Josh Green also raised, the attention span issue, the stick-to-itiveness, sort of dubious like Nancy is. And Josh, in general, has a very grim outlook on the future of the America Party. But it's curious to me that they both raise that question from afar. And I get it at some level because the guy just bounces around all over the place. And yet at the same time, it strikes me that you doubt him, you question him and his stick-to-itiveness on something that he starts obsessing about, and you can get burned, right?
Yeah, it's true. And, some of what Musk has said over the last couple of days has suggested that he's thinking about this in the same way that he's thinking about these big bets. He keeps reposting these comments from fans that say, like, they doubted he could start SpaceX, and he did.
I didn't realize this.
So this is like his next act. People forget, though, that Musk has threatened to start lots of that he never actually follows through with.
Such as?
So he threatened to start like a news outlet, or he's done it a few times. So, made various threats about media.
X,
even
I give you X.
Well, he did. You're right. He did buy X. But he said he was starting this thing called Pravda a few years ago, and that never happened. It's not like he never sort of flakes out on things. In fact, he flakes out on threats that he makes on X.
What's his hit rate on this stuff?
I don't know. Now, obviously, the sort of maximalist version of this, which is like he finds 400 congressional candidates and goes through the very hard, very boring, probably humbling work of trying to get these people on ballots in individual districts. This is what Nancy's talking about. It would take forever. It would be very expensive. These candidates would also have to raise a ton of money from outside. It would just be like a very messy thing, pretty much the opposite of like flying into Butler for an hour and enjoying the fun of a Trump rally. But I do wonder, what if something in between happens, right? And Musk has already floated various versions of this. Like, he could just fund a handful of Republican primary challenges, call it the America Party, not actually file with the FEC, but just say that's what this effort is, and just act like a normal kind of right-wing mega donor, attempting essentially to drag the MAGA coalition to the right. And also probably in the direction of subsidies, for his companies.
So the Tea Party is a wing of the Republican Party, so too with the America Party.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, Nancy, are you familiar with the term mammut?
I am not.
Oh, that's our version of taco. It's Musk always makes up with Trump. So it's this idea, and I feel like you are even buying into it in this answer. It's this idea that
don't tell her what she's thinking.
He's talking a big game, but he's not really going to follow through, and we kind of saw this.
He's got a lot more to lose than Trump does. But I got to say this, Max, this is my point here. Mammut's not right now. It's looking a little rough for Mammut.
Great,
I actually think it's looking a little bit more like Twamum.
What is that?
I just think that's Mammut backwards, right? But you're still all in on Mammut.
No, I mean, I just think that the force pushing Musk and Trump together remains. And you see it even in the way that Trump is attacking Musk. He has insulted Musk a few times, but it doesn't feel like, and maybe Nancy, maybe I'm just, failing to appreciate this, but it feels like he hasn't used his meanest insults yet. He's also focused on the third party, not as this hideous affront, but he's just sort of said, it's impractical. This is the way the system is. It feels like he's pulling his punches a little bit and avoiding giving Musk the full double-barreled, insult cannon that he sometimes reserves for his enemies.
It's always been a two-party system, and I think starting a third party just adds to confusion. It really seems to have been developed for two parties. Third parties have never worked. So he can have fun with it, but I think it's ridiculous.
Well, Trump also just historically does get mad at people. But I would say one interesting thing about him, and he will attack them and he can be vicious, is there are very few people that the bridges are totally burned. He was furious with Steve Bannon when Steve Bannon left the White House during the first term. Now they talk. Steve Bannon was at lunch at the White House, a few days before Trump bombed Iran. Trump is willing to make up with people, I think much more so than people realize. And so I could see them 100% making up. I also just want to make the point that Elon doing this, also runs the risk of just really alienating Republican voters who are completely beholden to Trump. And if they're going to pick someone Trump versus Elon, they're going to pick Trump. I mean, Trump is not just a political figure or a president. He's almost like a movement figure in terms of politics. I mean, people just feel so strongly about him. His supporters, his detractors also feel strongly that I just think, Musk would not just have to take on the mechanics of the third party and the money and the time and the attention, but also just take on sort of the cult of Trump's personality.
I've seen, Nancy brought up these political consultants salivating over the chance to take Elon Musk's money. And you actually see some of this slipping out into public. Andrew Yang has been tweeting at Musk. Mark Cuban has been tweeting at Musk. These consultants are all talking about how great an idea a third party is. But most of these people are talking about a centrist third party, which is not what Elon Musk is talking about. He's talking about a far-right political party.
Is it far-right?
What is his complaint? What are his policy positions?
Well,
his policy position is that we need to drastically cut the deficit. Essentially, it's not that the big, beautiful bill is bad because it cut Medicaid, which is what the centrists think, and which actually might be a credible position from which to start trying to build some kind of political movement. It's that they didn't cut enough. He's called Social Security a Ponzi scheme on the Joe Rogan show. He is not in sort of the mainstream of what centrist voters think. His views are sort of out there. They're all over the place, and he's attacking Trump from the right.
Okay, so that is a fair point, that saying we got to go harder at Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid is not a centrist view. But Nancy, saying that the debt is out of control and our deficits are out of control, that's not far-right politics, is it?
That's just not a view that is in vogue right now in Washington, I would say broadly. And it's not something that voters are caring about. And talking about cutting Social Security, regardless of party, is the third rail for voters. Old people want their Social Security. They don't want to support some political figure who talks about cutting it or even changing it. I mean, that's why Doge, I think, was so unpopular. That's just not a winning position.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a little mini illustration of what a headache Doge is going to be, both for the White House, but also maybe even more so for Elon Musk, with this tragedy in Texas, right? One of the subplots, and I don't think we know yet, but you're starting to see reports about, was NOAA, the weather service, essentially understaffed? Did that contribute to not predicting? There's just a lot of ways in which,
and understaffed because potentially they were gutted by Doge.
Yeah, and there are just all sorts of these kind of little things where attacking government services that were working well created all sorts of liabilities for Musk, and then in turn for
right.
Trump.
And whether or not that actually turns out to be the case or not, and I'm not sure we know the answer to that, the narrative politically certainly does not help.
Yeah. No, and it just shows that beyond just going to the Doge website and seeing the top line number, 160 billion or whatever, there aren't a lot of successes that you can point to. So it's a lot of political liabilities and a lot of disruption, kind of in the bad sense, without necessarily a ton of political upside.
Third parties have never worked in the sense that they've never won an election, as you were pointing out, Nancy. But as I was remembering, Teddy Roosevelt did cause, I believe, William Howard Taft to lose the election way back when. And I think you can make an argument that Ross Perot cost George Bush the 1992 election. If the America Party picks off voters, who is it picking off, even if it's some at the margin? Is it 20-something-year-old guys? And where is it pulling people from?
Well, it's a little early to say because you would also have to see like who are the candidates that this party is putting forth and backing and what do those people look like. But I think it would probably pick off like, tech bros who are like, oh, right, we should cut Social Security. We should shrink the federal government. I'm not sure like how big of a slice of the electorate it is. But again, it would really depend. What Elon's going to have to do if he does the third party is find all these candidates who also want to cross Trump, and then he will put them up for different congressional seats. But each candidate will sort of have to run his or her own race and have his or her own policy positions, which I guess Elon would have to support. And so, I think each of those candidates would appeal to probably different people.
Yeah. Now, Max, when we were talking about what this party stands for, down on very, very much against debt and deficits. That, by the way, is also the origin story of Doge. What else in his eeks and such do we know that this party will stand for?
It's like a combination of Elon's interests and sort of techno Silicon Valley right-wing isms. And I'm piecing this together from a bunch of tweets, but Elon has indicated that modernizing the military with AI and robotics, pro-tech, pro-crypto, pro-natalist, it's like a bunch of essentially, internet guy ideas. But again, like, I don't know how big Musk's base is. Like, it's not that many people. It's enough people to build a very successful car company. I'm not sure it's enough people to build a successful political movement. Watching this, so I covered Peter Thiel's donations in the 2020 cycle. And Thiel spent, off the top of my head, I don't know, more than $50 million to get essentially two Republican Senate candidates who were sort of far-right candidates to win their primaries. And it was pretty successful. Both J.D. Vance and Blake Masters managed to win their primaries, and one of those two guys, J.D. Vance, won a Senate election. That cost $50 million. And the reason it worked primarily was not the money, but the fact that Donald Trump endorsed both of those guys. And in those elections, the big thing, as big as the money was, it was trying to get Trump to endorse those guys. And it just kind of shows you that, like, on the right, it's pretty hard to run a successful election and not get smushed if you're on the wrong side of Trump.
To me, Elon sort of putting together this third party, I'm like, who does that appeal to apart from David Sachs? Who like maybe would go along with him? I don't know.
And Nancy, I don't know. David Sachs does a pretty good job right now. He may stick with it.
Which is that job.
Which is he's the president's AI advisor, and he's in proximity to power.
Right. So if he goes with Elon, which I could sort of see him being one of the few people who does, he will lose that job because the Trump people are all about revenge and leverage, and they will ice out anybody who goes along with this Elon idea.
Nancy, on your point about how Trump has a way actually of making up with quite a few people, does he have a sense of gratitude towards Musk and the money and the ground game in 2024? And is Donald Trump in the White House right now, if not for Elon Musk?
So I haven't talked to Trump about this specifically, so I have no idea exactly what he's thinking. I mean, I think, the people around Trump and sort of the Trump world at large, I think they're grateful for Elon's money. I think they think Elon's a little weird. I think Elon made a bunch of people in the White House mad or annoyed them. But I also think they won also because of Trump and like the political figure that he is and the team's sort of political savviness. I don't think that they give all the credit to Elon. I think they would be like offended by that suggestion.
Not all the credit, but did he perhaps tip the balance, I guess would be.
I don't think they would say he tipped the balance. I think that they would say things like Trump getting indicted, which like supercharged the base's sense of grievance and like made really people coalesce around him was a key moment. The assassination attempt, Biden just being such a bad candidate. I think that there were a bunch of things. Musk helped with some money in some key primary states. But I don't think that they would say they owe the election to him. And I think that he's created a lot of headaches for them since then. I will also just say, like, broadly, the vibe in the White House now and in Trump world is like they feel like they're winning. They're ecstatic. They feel like they passed this big tax bill. Trump is like riding high. His staff is riding high. And Elon, meanwhile, is just kind of annoying them. And so that is the kind of the context in which all of this is happening.
Okay, so Nancy, I'm going to ask you again now about Mammut and whether you indeed subscribe to the Max Chaffkin theory. Do you believe in Mammut?
Yeah, I think people miss this about Trump. One is that he is a very hospitable person and like is actually more charming in person than people think. And the second is that he will like accept people's apology or forgive people. So I feel like, yeah, Elon's not in the wilderness. Like they could make up, today without an issue.
Listen, Trump hasn't even given Musk a diminutive nickname yet. And until that happens, like I don't even think this is a full feud.
Final question for the two of you. In November 2026, does the America Party take at least one seat in either the chambers of Congress? Nancy Cook.
Nope.
Max Chaffkin.
No. My answer is no, but I think that Elon Musk will successfully back one House candidate, not necessarily on an America Party line.
Gotcha.
I could see that. I agree with Max.
Nancy, come back and join us again soon.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
So Max and I are now joined by Esha Day, a stocks reporter here at Bloomberg.
Thank you for having me.
Esha, in the wake of the launch of the Great America Party on Saturday, the stock sank 7% yesterday, which, as you've often told us, Esha, by Tesla standards, not an enormous move, yet 7%, is 7%. Bounced back a little bit today, but the mood out there seems pretty glum. That angst that among the bulls that we've noted in recent months seems to keep building and building. Tell us about what you're reading in notes from analysts, what kind of, what you're hearing in conversations you're having. What is Esha Day seeing?
Sure. I think the mood, I would call it one of extreme caution at this point. So most of the people that I'm speaking to, and mind you, these are mostly Tesla investors or I would say bullish and bearish analysts as well. But essentially everybody's kind of keeping their fingers crossed and really hoping that this will just kind of blow over.
They're just hoping it's going to go away.
You hear what Esha's saying, right? She's talking about Mammut. She's belief that Musk and Trump, that this will just blow over. He's not going to do this. They're going to make up. That's the trade.
Okay. So they're hoping for Mammut, but at the same time, they're not thrilled, right? I mean, I think among those expressing concern at a louder and louder, level is Dan Ives. How do you refer to Dan Ives, Max?
the QAnon shaman of Tesla bulls.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, what did he write? Was it just today, I think?
It's just today, but I mean, this is not the first time that Dan is coming out and kind of, really pushing back on this, what he calls a soap opera. And he's saying that soap opera needs to stop. But his note this morning...
He's not enjoying the soap opera.
No, clearly not. Which is unusual for Dan, I would say. So he's essentially saying that the company is now at a tipping point. I mean, big words. His point is that Tesla board, this is the time for Tesla board to really step in and make some changes and try and rein in Musk and his antics somewhat. And he believes that this is the time to do it. I mean, the note is pretty forceful. As Max said, I would call Dan an Uber bull. His price target on the Tesla stock is the highest on Wall Street. It's $500.
What is the stock at right now?
I think it's around $300. Yes. Yeah. And the stock has been hovering around that level despite some fairly large-ish moves for about a month or so now. So, $300. He has a $500 price target.
So, Max, the board, Mr. Ives says, is going to step in. I mean, it's going to bring him to heel.
You read Dan Ives' note, and as Esha says, you can sort of see why that's a problem because Dan Ives, his big thing after the election was that this was great news for Tesla because Trump, the most powerful man in the world, is suddenly aligned with the CEO of Tesla. Trump is going to basically sort of use his political force to essentially legalize autonomous cars. All of a sudden, that's going to ease the path for Tesla's robotaxis. That was the thesis. Now, as that thesis is falling apart, obviously that's going to create problems, and that's why you see Dan Ives wanting Mammut, find some way to avoid a protracted feud. However, when you read this note that Esha's talking about this morning, you sort of see why it's going to be pretty hard for the board to do any of the stuff that Dan Ives says, because there's no real stick. Dan Ives doesn't propose threatening to fire Elon, because that is pretty much unthinkable to the Uber bulls. Part of Ives' thesis is that Elon Musk creates a lot of the value for the company. So his solution is essentially the other version of this, which is to just pay him a lot of money. So the way...
Wait.
It's
so
really awesome.
The proposal is to encourage bad behavior.
The proposal is where there's a fork in the road, Musk is out of control, and to fix this, essentially, he wants the Tesla board to write him a big check. And not only one big check, because the plan is, if you read this note, is to give Musk a new pay package that will bump his equity up to 25%. This is the idea that if Musk owned a little bit more of Tesla, maybe he would be incentivized to spend some more time there. He also wants for the board to consider writing a second check, which is to buy XAI, which, of course, would be another mega payout for Elon Musk. And remember, XAI is this company that Elon sort of started in his spare time, recruited a bunch of ex-Tesla engineers. In certain ways, it seems kind of competitive to Tesla. So the solution is to bring Musk in line, essentially, by aligning the incentives. Another way to say that would be to give him a bunch of more money.
Right. So tie him closer to the company. You punish him, Max, by throwing bigger checks at him. I mean, maybe Mr. Ives. I mean, but here's the thing. If you're Musk, Esha, and your net worth is what, roughly?
It obviously goes up and down a lot, but right now it's around $345 billion.
All right. I mean, is an extra 4, 7, 8, 10 billion? I mean, does it matter? I mean, I guess it would only matter if it helps you fund the America Party. But part of the whole thesis is Dan Ives want to pry you away from that godforsaken idea. So I don't know. I mean, to Max's point, though, Esha, about how much Elon is Tesla and Tesla is Elon, you had somebody quoted in a story recently saying that fully 95% of the value of Tesla, of the market cap, which is some $960 billion, 95% is not derived from current operations, but from anticipation of what is to come, new business lines, new revenue streams. I mean, it's a staggering number. I think for most companies, the value that the CEO or the value of what is to come down the line and things that we can't quite even see yet is going to be far, far smaller than that. This is the cult of Musk and the genius of Musk. As Dan Ives is saying, you may be furious with him and disappointed, but you're stuck with him, right?
Absolutely. Yes. What Dan Ives is saying and the really strict measures that he's putting out, they really speak to this kind of, push and pull that Tesla investors are feeling right now. Like they are furious. They do think it's a huge distraction.
They're powerless, though.
They're powerless because, they have put that power in that man in some ways as well.
So powerless that Ives says, give him more money.
Look,
give him a bigger carrot.
I think, honestly, there's a sense to it. I mean, it does seem like, as you say, David, incentivizing bad behavior, although it's hard to imagine Musk responding well. Everything we know about Elon Musk, it's hard to imagine him responding well to an ultimatum. You worry, you give him an ultimatum, he might do something even more rash.
And
we've seen that over and over again. And that is, in a weird way, right? It's what gives him so much power is that he is a little bit erratic. There is this kind of wild card factor. Again, it's a little bit Trumpy.
It is a little bit Trumpy. By the way, Esha, I will note that since Tesla joined the S&P 500 at the end of 2020, the stock has wildly underperformed the S&P 500. It's up all of 26%. I mean, for that period, basically what you could get from owning treasury bills. The S&P is up 77% in that time on a total return basis. And the NASDAQ is up 83% over that time. Granted, this strips out the immediately preceding period, which was the pandemic, the crazy pandemic rally that sent Tesla soaring. But yeah, you're not talking about a 4.5-year period where the stock's treading water.
Yep, that's true. And why is that? One part of it is definitely that it was preceded by that 750% rally in 2020.
Wait, say that number again. Was it
750%?
Oh man, that's even bigger than I remember. How did we miss that, Max?
But some of it is also just this like constant noise that has surrounded the stock since then. The EV business has kind of stabilized, so there's not a lot of surprise in there. Then there was, of course,
hasn't
the
stabilized. It's kind of started to go sideways.
Yes,
yeah.
and then it started kind of slowing down. So that was one disappointment. The core business isn't really growing kind of leaps and bounds as it was supposed to. Then there was the noise around Twitter, him buying Twitter, and that entire distraction around it, him having to sell stock. I mean, and when I talk to investors right now, that is one instance that keeps coming up a lot. Not so much his other controversies, of which there have been many, but that the Twitter controversy, or buying Twitter and the distraction related to Twitter, which is now X, and now his political foray. These are the two big.
So the soap opera that Ives refers to, I mean, there is really several soap operas that seem to
Ives
never
refers
end.
to the political soap opera, which I think has just gone completely out of control, especially after Musk and Trump had their fallout. So, it was always kind of a wild bet, right? Like the fact that these two men are really close, and just the proximity to the president will give Tesla some sort of a wild edge over competitors. It was always kind of a crazy bet.
It was a lot of steam. It was a lot of smoke. Max, being the ace reporter he sniffed that out in November, to which I had said, well, if that is true, if it's all smoke and mirrors, just collect the gains and sell the stock. And I don't know. In hindsight, damn, that would have been genius.
We should charge more for this podcast.
Yes.
All right, Esha, thanks for joining. Max, thanks as always.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
This episode was edited by Anna Masarakis and produced by Stacey Wong with help from Rachel Lewis-Krisky. Blake Maples handles engineering and Dave Purcell fact-checks. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thanks, as always, to our supporters Joel Weber and Brad Stone. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.